Are you on the path to building a business that scales, or are you unknowingly setting yourself up for failure? The difference between success and struggle often comes down to how well you manage your money, both personally and professionally. Welcome to another episode of the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Lonergan, and today we have a powerhouse guest joining us, Jason Schappert. Jason is a seasoned entrepreneur who not only built and scaled a thriving business, but also successfully had an 8-figure exit. Now he's taking everything he's learned and applying it to his new venture, Moola, a cutting-edge financial management tool designed to help entrepreneurs take control of their finances. In this episode, Jason shares the hard-earned lessons from his journey, the costly mistakes he made, the strategies that fueled his success, and the financial guardrails every business owner needs to avoid losing it all. Jason also gives us behind-the-scenes look at Moola and how this innovative tool is helping business owners digitize financial buckets, track investments in real time, and leverage AI for smarter financial decisions. If you're serious about growing and protecting your wealth, you won't want to miss this conversation. Plus, if you think the free insights Jason is sharing today are valuable, just wait until you hear what he offers inside Moola. So let's buckle up and get ready. This episode is packed with insights that could transform the way you manage and scale your business. Let's dive in. Quick heads up before we get started. At Vital Wealth, we help high-income entrepreneurs keep more of what they earn. If you're tired of handing over 6 figures to the IRS, head to vitalstrategies.com/tax and let's change that. Jason, thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm excited to have this conversation for a couple reasons. First, you've grown and scaled a business and exited that, and I'm looking forward to getting into that piece. And I'm also interested in talking to you about your current venture, Moola, which is I'm going to call it financial management tool. And most people think if I just earn more money, I'll be in better shape. And the thing that we've seen is it doesn't matter if you're making $30,000 a year or $2 million a year. If you don't have a financial management system in place, you're going to be in trouble. So I'm looking forward to diving into all those topics. Thank you so much for joining us
Yeah,
here today.
excited to be here. And like you said, you make all the money you want, but if you got a hole in your pocket, what good does it really matter at the end of the day? I know we'll get there, but that's a great preface to it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. So I'd like to just start off framing the conversation. You know, we think about how hard business is to grow and scale. You know, the number of businesses that fail are there's lots of them, and the number that actually exit is a really small number. So I'm looking forward to getting into that discussion. And you know, I feel like as entrepreneurs, we feel like there should be a payoff at the end of the day for all this blood, sweat, and tears we're putting into this. So if it's okay, can you tell us a little bit about your first business, M0A, and what that business is all about, and how you grew it to the point where you could sell it.
Yeah, absolutely. You made a great point there. If you're just starting a business to start a business without a plan, you just made yourself a job. And at the end of the day, what good is that, right? We have to always be planning for that exit. So our first business was in a very obscure niche. You've heard the phrase "you get rich in a niche." Well, we eventually were living proof of that. We weren't at the very beginning though, but we were one of the largest providers of FAA test preparation for pilots. So everything from you want to just become a hobbyist to you want to be an airline pilot one day. My wife and I, we produced all the curriculum. At our largest point, we had 36 team members and licensed our curriculum to colleges and everything else. But it did not start out that way. I'm jumping to the sunshine and rainbows end of the story there with the 8-figure exit and everything else. In reality, where it all started was there was a tow truck at the end of my driveway and they were coming from my car because I had poor financial management. Here I am, newly married, new baby, trying to figure this business thing out. And I've got the tow truck man trying to take my car. I've got the foreclosure notice on the door. And I didn't put it together that if I'm a bad steward of my personal finances, my business finances were a wreck. As well. And that took, I mean, there were so many wake up calls across that and so many lessons across that as well. But it was 16 years of work. So, I mean, don't let anybody tell you things are an overnight success. Usually the good things are not. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. You said it very well to get to that exit point.
Yeah, I love that, and I think it's frustrating to me to see some of the social media stuff like, oh, hey, make $100,000 a month, with no employees just by, doing some YouTube videos or something along those lines. And it's like, that's a cute idea. And I think in America here, we're hooked on the drive through breakthrough. Like, I'm just going to I'm going to get the 5 minute abs, the great marriage if I just, download this app. And so I love the fact that you're acknowledging that, business is hard because we've been in the same boat. We've been we owned a bunch of real estate, early 2000s. The market turned down in 2008, 9, 10. And, we had some cash flowing assets, but all of a sudden the valuation wasn't there. And the bank's like, yeah, we'd be happy to refinance this for you, but you're going to have to come with $100,000 or $200,000 to refinance it. And it's like, I don't have that cash. And so we were, again, similar, looking at foreclosure on a number of different properties. And we hustled our way out of it, but we got real serious about stewardship. I remember my wife and I sitting down and because I was robbing Peter to pay Paul, like just making it all go. And I remember taking $1 worth of coins and going, okay. And I heard this concept from T. Harv Eker. And he said, have all these different buckets for your money. So 10% just goes to charity, to the church, right? 50% for necessities, like it just pays for your like living lifestyle, your rent, your car, your necessary clothing, food, that type of thing. 10% to the financial freedom account, just start saving some money for the future someday. 10% to play, like go have some fun with it. 10% long term savings. And what that means was I would put money away to put down on, let's say, a vehicle or a house. And then the payment on that could still fit into that 50% bucket. Um, 10% for my education, like let's develop me as an individual. So I took $1 in like dimes and I just put them in these like little envelopes. And I was like, okay, like Lord, universe, whomever, I'm going to show that I'm managing my money. And it was sort of from that point forward, it was like, all right, we're just going to get very serious about how every dollar is going to flow in a way that allows us to stay out of this pain from not being
Well,
good stewards
it,
of
it
our
it's
resources.
so true. So many people are, because of this social media society as well, they're searching for these home runs. They're searching for that next big client. They're waiting for that tax refund. They're expecting all these home runs. Yet you and I both know the game of baseball is won by a series of base hits. Now, guess what? A bunch of base hits don't make it on ESPN each and every day. It's the home runs that make it on ESPN and Instagram and YouTube and everything else, not a bunch of base hits. That's not sexy enough. So, but at the end of the day, like you said, to quote Jim Collins, talks about in Good to Great, the 20-mile march. You march, if you're racing across the United States, he says, the best way to do it is to march 20 miles every single day. When it's cold, when it's rainy, when it's beautiful, it doesn't matter. It's 20 miles. Whereas the other team tries to go 80 miles when it's pretty and stays inside when it's cold and everything else. Who wins is the person who's consistent. 20 miles, one foot in front of the other every single day. And that is how personal finance, business finance really works at the end of the day. There's no 5-minute abs, like you said. There's no there's no quick thing. And even Moola as an app, like I am just the guardrails. Jim Rohn used to say, knowledge isn't power, it's potential power. I can teach you all this stuff. You can teach all this stuff, but if they're not willing to put it to work, right? What good is it at the end of the day?
Right. Absolutely. I love it. Thank you for sharing all of that. So I would like to get into some of the foundational things that you use to uh, scale M0A to um, an eight-figure exit. I think those are things that people uh, dream about. Do you have some maybe core principles that when if we were to lean into these, this is what it takes to get a business to that level?
Yeah. Um, it's easy to jump in and we'll get into marketing and everything else, but for us, the biggest turning point in that business is when we truly discovered our purpose, truly discovered our why, to quote another popular book. But it kind of came to us in a funny way. At this point, we're a team of just 4 or 5 of us, and we just believe we're creating curriculum to help pilots pass their tests. And you know what? We were doing that, and we were doing a great job at that. And then one day, The one support team member we had came over and said, "Jason, I think you need to read this." Now, it wasn't every day that a support ticket got escalated all the way to me. There was a filter or two there before it got to me, and I came to read it. And it was a gentleman. I've had the privilege of meeting this gentleman, and he said, "Jason, I was flying the other day. I had an engine failure on takeoff at about 400 feet. And the moment that engine stopped and all I heard was the air whistling around me, he said, I heard your voice. I remember watching the in-flight emergencies video on what to do, and I just heard your voice through my head, and you guided me all the way down to this safe landing, talking to me and fictitiously in my head, and I landed in some farmer's field, didn't hurt his field, didn't hurt the airplane, everything was great." And he ended the email saying, "I'm alive today because of you and M0A." And I thought, "Whoa, wait a second. We're not just making videos, like, we are saving people's lives." And I'll tell you, it seems so crazy, but when we flipped the script, when we added to our Monday meetings, hey, what are we doing today to make safer, smarter pilots? What are we doing today? Is everything on your to-do list working today to save lives? Because that's what it really should be. Because if it's not, you should lower that priority down or outsource it to somebody else or something along those lines, because that's how you need to start prioritizing your day. And when we begin as a leadership team to make that shift, right? That's when things begin to really change for us. So hopefully some of the listeners are thinking, and you may say, well, I'm just a plumber or I'm just this. How, I'm not changing lives. But yeah, maybe you are, because you're saving the day from that disaster that would happen on their daughter's 16th birthday when the toilet's backed up, and you solved that issue so that wouldn't happen. Right. This is how you have to think about what you really do when it comes to business. And then when you can rally the team behind that, the marketing becomes very easy, right? The leadership becomes very easy from that standpoint when you get the team around the same rally cry.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I spent a minute just looking into M0A and some of your background there, and it looks like you took this um, this framework around education, and it changed from passing the test, like let us prepare you to pass the test to save your life, right? Like there's a huge difference there. And really, I think one of the things you highlighted was let's get away from the memorization and let's get towards like taking this content and like making it a part of you. And I think you gave us a fantastic example of that. It wasn't something like this guy was trying to recall. He's like, I remember Jason and these, the way he educated me in a way that I could like apply these things, and it saved me. So I think back to Seth Godin a little bit, and Seth Godin's a famous marketer, and Seth talks about the purple cow, right? Like I can be driving down the road and I see all these like black and white Holstein cows. I live in Iowa, so we're familiar with cows here. And they all start to look the same. You see your first cow, you're like, hey, that's kind of cool, cow. But now when I come across a purple cow, I'm like, now that's remarkable. That is something worth talking about. And I think the thing that people don't recognize is like I can spend all the money I want on marketing, but if I don't have a fantastic product out there that the community and the marketplace is going to bring tremendous value, I'm wasting marketing dollars. And it sounds like once you define that purpose, saving people's lives, everything we're doing is focused around that. It makes pushing that product out into the world a little
Well,
easier.
and imagine it from a marketing standpoint. At this point now in our business, we've got a little bit of competition. We're really a pioneer in the idea of doing an online ground school. Sometimes pioneers get arrows. We had plenty of arrows on our journey, but now we've got a little bit of competition. We're a few years into this thing, and the competition is all pushing, you'll pass your test, right? Guaranteed, you'll pass your test, just like any other test prep, company out there. And instead, our marketing message was, listen, of course you're going to pass your test. That's a no-brainer. But I'm in the business of you and your spouse flying to go see the grandkids and doing it safely. Or you, when there's 300 paying passengers sitting behind you and you've got your dream job, like that's what I'm in the business in, and you're doing it safely, right? When you can sell the vision, when you can sell the dream, and it's so fascinating. We just had a kind of a similar instance happen in Moola, and I'm skipping well ahead in stories now to a whole nother business. Um, we spend a lot of time, and I know you too, talk about what is wealth. And so often people say, well, I need millions of dollars. And I would argue you really don't, probably. Um, Someone left a comment the other day and said, you know what? Wealth for me is I want to make every single football game for my son this year because I've missed too many of them because I'm working so much. I thought, whoa, like that's a goal we can help you with. Like I got you covered, man. Like if wealth is spending more time with your family, loving on your kids, when your son comes to you and says, Dad, can we go throw the football? And you go, no, I got this Zoom call. No, I'm too busy, all this stuff. Instead, you go, yeah, let's go throw the football. Like that's the business we're in with Moola, right? You're in the same business, right? That's what we're really after with all that.
I love it. I love it. And one of the things that we talk about when it comes to wealth is the most valuable things in life are this acronym called REACH. Okay. The R's for relationships, E's for experiences, A's for advancement or growth, C's for contribution. The scriptures tell us it's better to give than receive. And then H is our health. And that's our physical, emotional, and spiritual health, right? Like you can't give me cancer for any amount of money. If I'm depressed, can't get out of bed, it doesn't matter. And I think what all of that revolves around when we think about it is it's not a new shiny fill in the blank. It's really time freedom, right? It's the ability to say, I don't need to take that Zoom call. I can go to the football game. I don't need to finish this report. I can go spend time watching my daughter's recital, you know? So I love all of that. And I'm really excited to get into Moola and hear more about, you know, how the program works because I think it's tremendous. Most people think if I just make more money, I'll be okay. And we've had clients making $2 million a year, spending 2.1, and frustrated that they like can't get it together. And it's like, well, you know, Parkinson's law of money says, you know, expenses increase with income, you know. And so if we're not careful, we will just keep finding a newer, bigger, faster, shinier fill in the blank because we're like, oh, you know, I need that. And I had a client say to me once, you know, once you go private or once you go first class, you know, it's really hard to go back. And so it's like that is the new standard for how we're going to travel and live. So this is great. So I'm going to bring it back to growing and scaling a business. And I'm curious because you know we've seen tremendous products out there, great products that don't have the marketing background. How did you get the word out? What were the tools, strategies you used um, to really market M0A to the general public that not to the general public, pilots, people that are
Yeah.
training to be pilots.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got that's interesting you say it that way because you gotta think there are 600,000 pilots in the United States. Like, talk about when I say a niche, I mean a niche. Like, it was very, very small, to do so well in. Um, Marketing was always a passion of ours, and to go back, we always preached a give first type of mentality. Now, we also were very blessed in we rode a great opportunity, which back then was YouTube. Um, this is, YouTube's not owned by Google yet, but it's out of the garage and it's a growing type business. Now, I live in Florida, and when you live in Florida, you go to the beach quite a bit. And I had a lot of buddies that surfed. Now, I'm an 18-year-old kid at this point. I surfed a little bit as well. And all these surfers had this GoPro thing attached to their surfboard. And I thought, whoa, they can take it in the water. It's doing all this stuff. I bet I can put that on my airplane and start filming videos from the air. They're filming surf videos. I'm gonna go film airplane videos. So I saved up, bought two original GoPro Hero ones, probably still have them sitting around somewhere, strapped them to the airplane, and begin to teach my flight lessons as if you were sitting there next to me, but you weren't, right? I framed a camera, right, like where your head would be and everything else. I left the left seat, the pilot seat empty. I sat in the co-pilot seat as the instructor and flew everything and did the entire video and began to release that content on YouTube with this simple premise. If you think the free stuff we're giving away here is good, imagine how good the paid stuff is. And that became the whole business model. We weren't doing pay per click. We weren't getting, and I wish I would have done pay per click back then because it was much cheaper than it is today. But that was the whole marketing business model. We gave away, it, people say you gave away a taste. No, it wasn't a taste test. We gave away some good content to the point that we had people saying, I don't know how you can afford to give away such good content. To which we would say, we couldn't afford not to give away that kind of content. So if you ever feel like in your business, in your marketing, you are giving too much away, you probably are not. Because what happened was we quickly positioned ourselves as the experts in the field. And still to this day, even exiting this business, we still, they still utilize that method of we position ourselves as the expert in this particular field, and people keep coming to us, and there's still, we're over thousands of videos on YouTube now, 250,000 subscribers. Again, in a niche of only 600,000, it's pretty cool to have that much market share following you on one social media channel. Um, but that brings me to one more interesting point. You can't have all your eggs in that basket. And a huge mistake I made early on is I was all in on YouTube. We're around 30, 40,000 subscribers. Business is finally getting good. Tow trucks are leaving me alone. Like life is getting good. And then, early on in '09, maybe 2010, there was a widespread YouTube hack where majority of accounts got hacked, lost all their content, all their subscribers, and the M0A original channel was one of those victims, and I lost everything. I wasn't collecting emails, I wasn't collecting phone numbers, I was all reliant on YouTube, yet YouTube held all that data. So here I was trying to scale, yet my ability to scale was contingent on someone else. So I say this to especially I see it so often now with, I hate to date this recording, I apologize, but the hot topic is banning TikTok. And I know there's a lot of young kids that are making their living on TikTok right now who, if they're not sweating it, they should be. I don't know where that's going to go with things, but if you've got all your eggs in that basket, you need to be still, I know you do it very well, collecting emails, collecting phone numbers, hold that. Even people who sell on Amazon, Amazon keeps that data. You don't. It's very hard to scale and create leverage when you don't hold that data.
Yeah, I love it. And I think we've seen this over time consistently, right? The platforms can change the rules on you and you can be out of business tomorrow, right? Like I had a friend that was had a huge following on Facebook for his business. And then all of a sudden Facebook basically shut down all the business pages and we're like, okay, if you want any exposure, you're going to have to pay for it. And it was like, oh my goodness. And then we can go to talking about things that were shut down. Vines used to be a thing, right? These really short clips, you know? So it's like history's littered with, not even that long ago, history's littered with, these platforms that are shut down. So it's like own the platform, right? Email's not going anywhere. It's decentralized. Phone numbers, not going anywhere, decentralized. And so, I think the more of that you can collect, taking people from your platform into your ecosystem, that you own and control, even communities that you control, I think are important. Whether that's on, Teachable, Circle, some of those other platforms, I think
You're
are
spot on,
great.
and it was really that idea that caused us to launch one of our first books, which was called The Private Pilot Blueprint, and you better believe, I mean, now it's commonplace, back then it wasn't that commonplace that, "Hey, for your email address and your phone number, here's a free book called The Private Pilot Blueprint," everything I wish someone would told me before I started my flight training. Um, and we released that book, and we just collected email after email from that of the right clientele, people looking to learn to fly. We implemented, and this is important too for scaling a business for those that are thinking generational or even just long term, is the rule of primacy, right? Who I interact with first is likely to keep my business for a long time, right? If your dad was a Ford guy, there's a high probability you're a Ford guy too. My dad was a huge Green Bay Packer fan. I don't follow a lot of sports, but if I did, it's the Green Bay Packer. Like this is the rule of primacy, who you were imprinted on early enough. So those thinking about where I'm thinking about with Moola now is how do we market to Gen Z? How do we be that first, financial freedom app in their phone, right? For that rule of primacy as well, building that long-term strategy. And that scaling doesn't happen overnight. Back to our analogy, it's a series of a bunch of base hits.
hmm Yeah, I love that, and I think I've got 3 daughters, two of which are in high school and athletes, and the thing we keep talking about is between Monday and Tuesday, the work you put in, you can't tell the difference. Like the incremental improvement is so small you can't see it. But between January 1st and July 1st, you can look back and go, okay, I've made real progress. You can't see it in any one day, but it's like all of those increments like stacked up. And I think the same thing's true with how you're managing your business, your finance, your health, all those things are great. So can you talk a little bit about what your infrastructure looked like? Did you have a bunch of employees that were teaching and helping people become pilots, or was it all online content
This is an
based?
excellent question that relates right back to scaling. So when I first started, like every entrepreneur, it was the solopreneur lifestyle. And someone told me very early on, and this still sticks with me, you don't have to get it right, you just have to get it going. And I know it's tough in today's society. You see this Instagram, everybody's filtered and so perfect and everything else. But just remember, trust me, you don't have to get it right, you just have to get it going. So early on, I was the guy on camera. I was the guy that edited it. In fact, it's so funny. I lived with my parents at the time. This is before we had like autofocus on cameras. This is '06, '07. I would focus my mini DV camera on my office chair. So I had a focal point. I'd press record. I'd run around. I'd sit in my office chair. Hey, everyone, Jason Schappert here with M0A.com. I would do the whole video. I'd get up. I'd undo it. I would hook it up to my MacBook Pro with a Firewire cable, if anybody remembers that, where you can't touch it. Otherwise, you'll drop frames. And I would edit the thing in iMovie because it's the only thing I knew how to do. That's basic, certainly by even today's standards. But I got the content out there. Now it took me all day to do one video, which brings me to the leverage point of my first hire. That same smart friend that sat me down and said, "You don't have to get it right, you just have to get it going." I'm now making enough money where I believe I'm ready to make my first hire, but I didn't know I needed help with video, I needed help with support, I needed help with leader, I needed help in so many areas. And that same friend said, hire somebody to shoot, film, and edit all that content. Because look what you're doing by making like one video a day and how it's taking you all day. Imagine that guy could be doing 4 videos a day for you. So you can be working on other aspects of the business. And that's how it all began. My first hire, who was with us all the way through the sale of the business, which was pretty cool to say, employee number one, was a video editor. And found him on, this is back when Craigslist was really actually a thing. I don't know if it still is anymore, but I found him on Craigslist. And 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 that's how we really grew it. He came with some equipment. So I was like, man, this is awesome. So, when you're looking to create leverage and you're looking to hire, you have to also say, okay, what hires are going to give me greater leverage? And when I say leverage, I mean like grabbing the crowbar way outside to create more leverage on whatever you're trying to move. That's what what's going to move the needle the most for you.
Yeah, I love it. And I think about Tim Ferriss. Tim has a quote where he's talking about, if you were to follow me around, my days look actually fairly boring. But what I'm trying to do is figure out what is the big domino. If I knock that one domino down, that's going to really make a huge impact in all the other things that I have going on in there. And I think you're saying that, like, okay, I'm going to outsource these other items. So when I do something, it's an absolute leverage use of my time, and it's going to make a huge impact. We think about a task matrix. Okay, a level 5 activity is the only thing Pat can do, right? A 1 activity is something anybody can do, like opening the mail, right? So it's like as soon as I stop opening the mail, doing those 1s, 2s, 3s, even 4s, and I'm just leveraged myself to like the max on those number 5 activities, that's when the business can take off. But it can be challenging there because it's like, well, I can't just go hire everybody to do all the stuff because I don't have enough revenue coming in. So it's a process.
Well, you have to also, and boy, are entrepreneurs bad at this one, unfortunately. You have to be willing to let go of those tasks too. A lot of times we have romanticized a lot of these things, and we believe the lie, and it is a lie, that nobody can do it as good as I do. Nobody will help steward this aspect of my business as well as I will. That is a lie, and it's a limiting mindset that will hold you back the rest of your life. There are plenty of, not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone is out to steal your ideas. Not everyone, all these things, right? There are so many good people out there. If you're willing to take the time to do the right interviews and everything else, and not just hire from the hip and find the right people, there are people that will steward your business as if it were your own business. And there's plenty of them that work for your business. There's plenty of them that work for our business, and they absolutely love it. But you have to be willing to say, I'm going to train you for this task and I'm going to let this task go from that standpoint. And that can be challenging for entrepreneurs. We love to hold on to things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Jason, this has been fantastic. Before we started recording, you mentioned something, and if it's okay, I'd like to dig into it. You said you sold your business, but your books were kind of a mess. Your financials weren't as cleaned up as they should have been. So, a congratulations for still getting the deal done, because oftentimes that can be a deal killer. But can you just talk a little bit about maybe the shape that your books were in, and how all of that came to be, and why you feel like you maybe left a little money on the table?
Yeah, well, it actually was a deal killer because the opportunity we sold to was the second private equity firm that came by. So I'll give you the full scope of things. Although we are a 30-person something team, my wife and I still ran this business as a mom and pop business. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we took mom and pop to another extreme. I was reconciling QuickBooks every single talk about here, I just preached to everybody on how you have to let stuff go, and again, I am a product of my own mistakes. I was the one keeping all the books, and I'm sure no one from the IRS is listening to this because I'm sure I'm the only business person who's ever done this, but you go to the grocery store and you use your business credit card and you go into QuickBooks and you call it an office meal or whatever it is, but you bought groceries for your family. Like I'm sure I'm not the only entrepreneur who's ever done such a thing and commingled funds like that. Well, we weren't looking to sell. We were approached by a private equity firm. Of course, you get all excited. You're like, oh my goodness, this is the moment. I knew it was going to come. I didn't think it would be now. This is great. We're under NDA. Due diligence is asking all these great questions. These fancy lawyers are asking us questions. And then all of a sudden, they stop and they say, hey, Jason, we're looking at your books. And it's very clear you have a good business, but we just can't see it from the numbers. Like we read everything, we see everything. I'm sure this is a great business, but your funds are so commingled. You stayed at the Ritz Carlton here for this event when you probably could have stayed at a Holiday Inn. And I know we're buying this thing off of EBITDA, and that's just hurting you at the end of the day. By the way, um, clean up your books and call us again. When you clean up the books, and that was devastating because in my mind. We had already sold. We had already been thinking about the trip we're going to take to celebrate. Like we had all this stuff going on, and my wife and I were genuinely heartbroken when it happened. But if you believe what Napoleon Hill says in the book Think and Grow Rich, which was written in 1937, by the way, and still so relevant today, he says, in every adversity, there's the seed of a greater advantage. And we said, okay, this stinks, right? No doubt about it. What can we do about it? How can we turn this to our advantage? Well, we went out and we hired a fractional CFO. I didn't think we needed a full-time CFO just yet, but there's plenty of great remote fractional CFOs where we get a quarter of their time and it's like having a full-time CFO. Amazing decision. We hired a full-time bookkeeper, so it wasn't Jason keeping the books, and there was a lot of training that had to happen because I kept QuickBooks a certain way and everything else to bring this, especially all the weird aviation vendors we had and everything else. Like, it was a lot to bring this person up to speed, but they instituted a lot of great QuickBooks rules and things that even I wasn't doing. They made the system better. Well, sure enough, 9 months go down the road, a different private equity firm, comes back at an even greater multiple, thus a higher number, and our books are squeaky clean, and we have, not only a year of not commingling our funds, but we even had the proper add backs of back when we did commingle funds so they could get a good, honest EBITDA number and everything else, and that was the deal we eventually closed on. And it it's, it's we lost a deal literally because of that, and I share that, humbly because I know I'm not the only entrepreneur who's commingled and made these mistakes before.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. And it is one of the things that we do spend a lot of time talking to our clients about. We think about the four cornerstones of what we'll call the entrepreneur private office. And the first one is cash flow, and just really understanding that cash flow and getting it as clean as we can get it, because we pay a fractional CFO to have on our team to just look at all of our clients' books and just give us feedback on, hey, if a sale is coming down the road, here's things they're going to look at, and this is going to be a problem. Like you got to get some things cleaned up in cost of goods sold, and you have one revenue line item. I'm pretty sure you don't have one product you're selling. Let's get all these things done. And I think that's I appreciate you sharing that wisdom, because it really is. And I think, like that Napoleon Hill quote at church on Sunday. We were talking about blessings, and sometimes we think blessings are in the form of good things that happen to us. But I think there's plenty of places in the scriptures where we need to rejoice in the trials and the suffering that comes our direction because there's so much that we can learn from those situations. When everything's going smoothly, I tend to not look around and pay attention to what's going wrong. It's when things are sideways that I'm like, okay, we got a lot of stuff to clean up around here. And I think this is one of those examples like, okay, fantastic. Let's get things cleaned up. And then to see how all that played out down the road, clean books, higher multiple,
Yes.
it's like, all right,
Well,
this was
to
good all
stick
the way
with your
around.
theme, my wife and I have learned through our years of you praise God for what He gives you, but don't forget to praise Him for what He takes away too, right? And because it always works out.
I love it. I love it. This is fantastic. All right. So I think all this talk about money leads us right into Moolah. And just if you could give us a 30,000 foot overview of what Moolah is, and then I'd like to just dig into the details if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Great analogy to use. 30,000 foot. You're sneaking these aviation analogies in here. I like it already, Pat. It's good. I'll lead with another aviation analogy. The nexus of Moolah started when my wife and I sold our business. The wave of emotions is off the charts, by the way. Originally, you're very, very excited. Then you're like kind of sad. You just sold your baby, it feels like. And now the next wave is what's next? We're 30 something years old. Like, what are we going to do next here from that standpoint? And my wife said, "Listen, you are a great teacher." Because at the end of the day, we were very good at taking complex subjects and breaking them into plain English. She said, "You have stewarded this family's finances with, I love algorithms and math and everything else from an investing and a savings and everything else standpoint. Why don't you build the technology that you've always been using and share it with the world?" And this is where Moolah came from, because if you think about it from an aviation standpoint, in my airplane, I have 6 instruments, and those 6 instruments at any given time are showing me what just happened 30 seconds ago, what's happening right now, and what's likely to happen in the next 30 seconds if I keep doing what I'm doing. And that's how aviation works. Where is that in my personal and business finances for that matter? That's why we created Moolah. Hey, here's what's happened over the last 30 days. That's great. Here's what's happening right now. And hey, dummy, this is what's going to happen the next 30, 60, 90 days if you keep doing what you're doing. Do you realize you have Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, HBO Max, Prime Kids, and your shows aren't even streaming right now? They're out of season. They're still filming them and you're paying happily for it. Like, this is the kind of intelligence we want to give people. And that's the nexus of it. And then to go back, you didn't even realize this when you teed it up at the show talking about your I'll use the word envelopes. We call them pockets. That's really where this all started. My mother still to this day uses the envelope budgeting system with physical envelopes with cash. And I remember as kids we used to always joke, "Mom's envelope never runs out." Well, it did. We just were kids and we thought $10 was $1 million back then. Um, so we have essentially digitized what we're calling pockets. And going back to these simple things, like you gave the example of the entrepreneur making $2 million but spending 2.1, I guarantee that person's not paying themselves first. And you and I know the power of that. So on the personal and the business side for that matter, we implemented a cash flow waterfall. Every time income comes in, we will auto waterfall it based on percentage to the pockets of your choice. Whether that's you want to tithe from it, you want to, whatever you wish to do in the syntax and the order you wish, we will just water cascade that thing on down so it's done for you. At the end of the day, Moolah is the guardrails. You don't have to turn any of those features on if you don't want to. It is the guardrails. To go back to the quote where we started, knowledge isn't power, it's potential power. Moolah is just potential power if you want to use it appropriately. We're we're not trying to be all things to all people. We're trying to be the financial freedom tool for the people who really want it.
Yeah. Because what is hard about in our digital money society today is not many people are dealing with cash, right? Like, I go to my daughter's events now and they actually won't take it. I have to use some sort of like digital payment, credit card, Apple Pay, something like that to get me in the door. So it can make the budgeting process more challenging, because I remember my wife and I, we were again digging out of a little bit of a hole with the real estate stuff, and I remember we had our play money. Effectively, I would go get the amount of cash every month that we would use to just go on date nights, right? And sometimes that was we are coming down to the office building and just turning on a movie. We'd rent a movie. This is back when there was still a movie store, and 10, 12 years ago, before all the streaming services and were as popular. And we just put a movie in and we'd watch it at the office to like, pay the babysitter when we get home, but it was just our time. And that's all we had money for. And that was okay. And I think I love what you're doing with the envelope system in a digital format. So can you walk us through a little bit of let's say I'm like, all right, Jason, I want to invest some dollars, right? How does that work? Can Moola help me with that? Can they tie into some of these platforms and get some
Yeah.
of my dollars
Yeah,
to work for me?
absolutely. And let me just go back one step and finish on the pockets and the envelope budgeting system essentially there too. When you set up a Moolah account, you really get two accounts, checking and savings account. How we have set up the system is I actually want you to keep a minimal amount, a couple $100 in the checking account because it's associated with your debit card, right? We don't want to reduce this fraud and everything else. I want you to keep everything in your pockets. Let's say you and the wife have that big concert you want to go to, whatever it is. So you're saving in your ticket pocket, your concert pocket, whatever it is. When it comes time to go on Ticketmaster and buy those tickets, you grab the $200, that's the price of the tickets, from your ticket pocket. You move it to your spending pocket. Then you enter your debit card on Ticketmaster and you spend it. Well, by doing that, you've done what we do on QuickBooks, usually 30 or 60 days in the rear, you reconciled in real time. So now I can see, whoa, look how much I'm spending on Uber Eats, right? Because you are reconciling everything in real time, assuming you use it that way to get that data. Whereas most businesses are reconciling QuickBooks 45 days in the rear, and then you get a P&L on your desk on day 50, and you are flying the airplane on 50-day-old data. Like, that's ridiculous. We need the real-time data from that standpoint.
That's so true. And we've seen people come in with year-old data. They are still not sure if they're profitable or not. And I'm like, yeah, they have the equivalent of the literal box of receipts. I'm like, why don't you spend the $30 a month or whatever it is to get QuickBooks Online, have it tied to your bank account, and then we can see real time what's going on with your business. And I think there's a little bit of poverty mentality there. There's also, I think it's also scary, right? Like, I think we have to acknowledge, like, if I know the data, data kills denial, which prevents disaster, right? So if I've got the data in front of me, I can't deny what's going on, right? Where if I don't have the data, I can just keep my head in the sand and pretend that everything's okay, that they're not going to foreclose on my house and they're not going to, hook the tow truck up to my truck and take it. And so I think having good data, and I think about this in almost every area, right? My business, right? Like it could be my finances on my business. It could be marketing numbers, like what do we have in the funnel? It could be my health metrics, right? Like what is my blood pressure? Right? Like those are all good pieces of information that
It's
uh,
so
yeah.
interesting you say that. I know you asked me about investing. I promise we'll come back to that, but you just led to a really great point. I was just leading a webinar on goal setting, right? We're into a new year, into goal setting, everything else, and people are so good. It's not a hard thing to set a goal. The hardest part is to tell yourself the truth about where you're really at on the map. Everyone puts X marks the spot for the treasure, but they lie about where they are on the map. And you can't get to the treasure if you lie about where you're at on the map, because then you can't create the plan to actually get there. So your analogy is perfect from that standpoint. You asked me about investing, and I took a hard left turn. I apologize. Um, Moolah is your basic investing tool as well, and I use basic very purposefully, not to sound boring, because I take a very basic strategy. At the end of the day, we take the Warren Buffett strategy. Warren Buffett said for his foundation, for his family, for everything, "Hey guys, put it in some low-cost index funds. Mimic the S&P 500. If you want to play around with one or two outliers, that's totally fine. But the majority of my assets," he said, "I want in a I'm not won't name any index funds or anything like that, but in an index fund of your choice, low fee to no fee." And that's essentially what we push at Moolah as well. Yes, we're your full brokerage. Yes, you can go buy Nvidia and Tesla all you want. I personally wouldn't recommend it. I'd much rather you in an index fund. And if you want to play with crypto, yeah, by all means, 1% of your speculation portfolio, sure, go have fun. By the way, do you have an IRA? Because that's where I'm forget everyone was talking about crypto and AI and everything else. Do you have an IRA? That's the real question we
Yeah.
we need to
Yeah.
talk about, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I love this. And I think asset allocation, like you're talking about, is the key, right? Like Warren Buffett made a bet. He said, "Okay, I'm going to take the S&P 500. You pick whatever hedge fund managers you want. I'll bet $1 million the S&P outperforms." Guess who won? Warren Buffett won, right? The guy that made the bet with him, he had to give $1 million to Warren's charity. So I think if we just look at that base level, like picking stocks is so hard. Like the hedge fund guys make a ton of money trying to outperform the markets, and very, very rarely do they do it. And if they do it, they don't do it consistently. And so it's like, all right, let's just lean into the indexes. And I think if anything there, we can start mixing with asset allocation a little bit and go, all right, we're going to add in some alternatives. I don't mind, like you said, having Bitcoin be a percentage of our portfolio. Let's just make sure that we're doing good things like rebalancing that portfolio, taking Bitcoin into consideration. So when it runs up to $115,000 per coin, like we're selling off some of those gains and moving them in because we're seeing it drop off. So
You're exactly right with asset allocation. Even look at the top 25 stocks in the S&P 500, which is weighted, by the way, with this AI boom. Most of them are some sort of technology related. With Nvidia leading the charge right now, the reason the S&P 500 is up and down so much is basically what's Nvidia doing right now because of the weight it's pulling on the S&P 500. So is the S&P 500 a perfect asset allocation? Not always. So you need to be mindful of that with some real estate. I'll let you play with some crypto. And maybe you're saying I can't do real estate. What do you mean I can't go buy a duplex? Can you do a REIT? Can you do something, please, just to diversify a little bit?
yeah, no, I love all of this. And when we think about our levels of investing, we want to see typically people get a brokerage account, not even IRA dollars, because they're not very liquid. We think liquidity is so important. This is after our, I'll call it safe money is sort of taken care of. Now let's have 1 year's worth of brokerage, 1 year's worth of income in brokerage. Now I can start looking at some of these other opportunities. I don't necessarily have to, but like I can start looking at, okay, do I want to go invest in real estate? And I think the thing that, we're involved in about $150 million worth of projects. Now, my wife runs that full time and has 400 employees, right? So it's like you have to understand if I'm going to go buy a duplex, it's not passive income. It's like owning another small business. Again, I love real estate because of the appreciation, the amortization, the depreciation, the cash flow, all of those things I think are tremendous asset. Even the leverage, that we can apply there is good. The leverage cuts both ways. We've seen that personally. When if you're over levered and things go sideways, it can be a problem. So this is wonderful. So we've talked through a lot of things. Let's talk about Moola and AI and how that factors into um, helping me manage my money. Is AI brought into this equation?
Absolutely, it is, and I want to give an asterisk next to this right now because I feel like especially now everybody and their brother are calling things AI that really isn't AI. Like it's unlike my 10-year-old can see it now. Like that's not really AI, but they're calling it AI, dad. Like that you see these things because it's such a hot buzzword. So I was talking to the marketing team the other day. I'm like, I almost don't want to use AI in our marketing anymore because it's become such a cliche that just everybody says it, whether it really is or it really isn't. We genuinely are using, well, I'll say, a large language model that learns your tolerances, learns and understands your goals, knows where you're at geographically, knows the ethical things that you would and wouldn't like to invest in as well when making these different recommendations. The majority of them index funds as well, but we are providing an algorithmic scoring system based on everything we call the Moola meter as well. Because at the end of the day, I'm not trying to make a bunch of day traders. I'm trying to help people that earned the money make informed decisions is what I'm really trying to help people to do. And we use AI to do that. We use AI almost like we would use, like you mentioned earlier, the level 5 tasks or the level 1 tasks. I'm using AI to pull all the news articles related to, let's say, Tesla right now. and then to read it and give me a, hey, is this good for Tesla stock, bad for Tesla stock, neutral for Tesla stock? So you can very quickly scan and go, oh, there's 6 bad articles about Tesla. I better check this out real quick right now. And I'm not trying to tell people to time the market. You and I know it's about time in the market, but still, we also believe, right? The Bible says we need to know the condition of our flocks. Well, I think you know the condition of your investments as well. And that's a great way to do it. So they don't have to sit and read the Wall Street Journal with their coffee for an hour every single day. We help to really kind of automate that process for them.
I love it. This is fantastic. Anything else we should talk about Moolah before we move on?
I mean, obviously, if anybody, before anybody even downloads the app, I want them to fall in love with us. We're taking the same model we did the last business. We give a lot away. So go check us out across all social media from TikTok all the way through YouTube. We are Moolah Copilot. I had to sneak in the aviation term in there. Moolah Copilot. You can find us there because that's exactly what I want to be. You are the pilot in command. You're the pilot of your finances. I'll be the co-pilot. I'll make some calls for you. I'll help you with your checklists. I'll do all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're in charge. I'm just a tool to help you out there. That's why I was just the co-pilot.
Fantastic, and we'll have links to all the social tools that you've got out there. And I was spending some time on your Instagram, and really informative. I do appreciate the information you're putting out there. I think it's great. And the website is moo.la.
Yeah, mood.law. You
Uh,
got it.
so we'll again have that in the show notes if people are ready to go get started there. We think that is just something great to check out. So, Jason, this has been wonderful. I'm just going to think about a few things. You know, you've taught us about bringing value to the marketplace, like understanding your purpose, and we're very much believers in who, not how. Like, if you're giving all this stuff away, now I need to engage with you because I need the framework sort of handed to me. I need somebody to step me along in the process versus me figuring it out watching the YouTube video. So I love what you did there. I think that was fantastic. And then thinking about all the lessons we talked about on managing your finances in the business and doing that well, and then thinking about it from a personal perspective, like it doesn't matter how much I can't out earn my stupidity when it comes to my spending, right? You know, like I tried that trick. Yeah, I thought if I just go hustle and make more money, it'll all be okay. And I'm glad that was in my past, and now you know
Same.
we've
Totally the
developed some
same.
good tools moving forward.
Yes.
So um, you know, I just think about what comes with all that, right? Like the peace of mind of knowing where I'm at financially is so good, and the fact that I know I'm moving towards financial freedom, I think is exciting. You know, all those things lead to success when we start uh, engaging with tools like Moolah. Yeah, I don't really care what the tool is. I don't care what the system is. You just have to have one. You know, if you just use the system of the money's going in my bank account and I'll save what's left over, it's not
It
going to
it
work
it
well.
it it won't work out, and, to your point, we spend so much time focusing on what we see on stage, what we see on Instagram, all these people succeeding, but we forget in business and life and everything, it's chaos behind the scenes. And that's why I appreciate your podcast with the willingness to pull back the curtain and say, "Hey, listen, even behind our stage, it's a little bit crazy. I know we put on a brave face, but that's just how it is." For our daughter's 10th birthday, we had a daddy-daughter day. We flew to New York for her first Broadway show. Loves singing, dancing. So daddy-daughter day, went to see The Lion King. And during the intermission, her name is Ella. Ella looks at me and says, wow, dad, they must practice so much. I mean, everything you see, it just looks perfect. I said, you're right. What you see on stage is perfect. What you don't see behind that curtain is people are yelling at each other. They're moving sets in and out. Someone's running around half dressed. I mean, it is chaos behind there, but they come out on stage and everything looks so good. And unfortunately, we judge our reality based on someone else's stage. And that's wrong to do that. My behind the stage is messy. Pat's is, everyone's is, right? We just have to work through that, and we have to clean up that mess sometimes, but it's this ongoing cycle of just getting better, putting one foot in front of the other every single day. Stop looking for home runs and just take one foot forward on your financial freedom journey.
I love it. That's so true. We've seen clients that have had $100 million offers that, you know, on the surface, you know, the duck's just nice and smooth on the surface, but underneath, yeah, there's constantly paddling, just trying to keep up with all of it. And I think if you're a growing enterprise, that's never going to go away. So I think it's good to to acknowledge it and embrace it and just go, all right, we're just going to just keep failing forward. It's good stuff. And then I think about, if we don't embrace these things, uh, our business won't grow. We've got the frantic and maybe confused state that we're in. Just hopefully, that it'll someday all work itself out. But oftentimes we got to get ourselves out of the business to work on it for a minute and just make sure that everything's going well. So, Jason, this has been wonderful. I appreciate all the wisdom and knowledge you've shared with us from. Uh, both growing and scaling a business to an 8-figure exit to how to just manage our the dollars that come through us. Stewardship is a valuable thing. Anything else to add before we wrap up?
I just want to remind everybody as a closing thing, you don't have to get it right. You just have to get it going. So if you're listening to this and you've got that idea, that new product, you're ready to launch towards your financial freedom, you're tired of the stress. It may start out messy. That's fine. Just get it in motion, one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, I love that. Again, going back to Seth Godin, he just talks about ship it. Just get the first iteration out there. And the cool thing is, when you first start, nobody's watching anyway, right? Like I'm sure if you listen back to my first podcast episode and watch your very first YouTube
Oh yeah,
video, you're like,
we were like, oh, I wouldn't have
what are
listened to
we
me.
doing? Right. This was
Yeah,
terrible.
right,
I think my mom and my sister and my
right,
wife are the only people listening,
right.
And so,
I get it.
yeah, so that's the good news, right? You don't have a huge audience when you get started, but you're learning, you're growing, you're figuring it out day by day. And there's something to persistence, just being in the game long enough. Those that are willing to endure, they'll find success. So, Jason, thank you so much for being here today. I
Thank you, my
appreciate it.
friend. Good to chat with you. I'll see you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast. I hope you found tremendous value in today's conversation with Jason Schappert. His insights on scaling, financial management, and leveraging the right tools can truly transform the way you approach your business and wealth building journey. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to share it with someone who could benefit: a fellow entrepreneur, a business partner, or anyone looking to level up their financial game. And don't forget to subscribe and tune in next week for more strategies to help you grow and protect your wealth. And remember, you're a vital entrepreneur. You're vital because you're the backbone of our economy, creating opportunities, driving growth, and making an impact. You're vital to your family, creating abundance in every aspect of life. And you're vital to me because you're committed to growing your wealth, leading with purpose, and creating something truly great.